I love video game demos, but at the same time, I also love my money. So personally, I hate wasting my hard-earned money on mediocre video games, so I'm very picky. This is why I value the video game demo. But as time goes on, I've noticed a sudden shift in availability of video game demos and a decrease in quality. Remember the time we could download and play demos of a game weeks before it came out? Well, nowadays we do still have video game demos like the ones you see on Steam, but when it comes down to the consoles, we don't really see a lot. Now, betas and alphas are technically video game demos, however, they're almost exclusively for online multiplayer games. But why? Why have big AAA companies stop pushing out video game demos? Well, my name is Quasi, and today, let's talk about video game demo, because this is just a discussion. Okay, so what is a demo? I don't really think I need to go into detail because if you're a gamer, you should already know what a demo is. So better yet, what is its purpose? Well, typically video game demos give a taste of what's to come. Usually developers would handpick the best part of a certain game and allow fans to decide whether or not they'll buy the game depending on how good the demo was. But for kids back in the day, specifically me, demos served more as another game. You see, my parents were never enthusiastic to go out and buy me new games, so I literally just lived off video game demos. I used to stack my PlayStation with a bunch of demos to the point where I owned more demos than I did actual games. I remember playing the God of War 3 demo over and over again because I was highly impressed with the Zeus fight. And I know I'm not the only kid that did this. I'm pretty sure so many kids around the world were doing the same thing. But I think this is the reason why we stopped seeing video game demos. And this leads me to my next point. I think some of you might remember those gaming magazines back in the day. Well, some of those used to come packaged with demos for upcoming releases. So with just one subscription, you could look forward to a free game demo every single week. There were also those mega demo packs where it was like one disc with 5 to 6 different demos. So essentially, it was like a new game. But as much of a good idea as it is, there were some downsides. And I believe this is the reason why we stopped seeing traditional demos. So there's a few scenarios that could possibly play, and it all boils down to expectations. Let's take Cyberpunk as an example. Given all the hype for the game, imagine CD Projekt Red released a demo for Cyberpunk and it was in the exact state as the game is in now. This would completely tank sales because people will see how buggy the game is from the demo and they most likely wouldn't purchase it on release. Another scenario could be that CD Projekt Red could release a working demo, but the actual game would be buggy. I think if they did this, the outrage would be 10 times worse than what they're getting now because it would seem kind of malicious giving out a perfect demo, purposely hiding flaws to push sales, even though they kind of did that with their media day. And lastly, the most positive scenario is when they release a good demo and a final good game. I think a lot of developers are aware about these possibilities and I don't blame them for just taking the safe route where you just don't release a demo. But honestly, I believe just releasing a game without no type of public testing isn't really that consumer friendly. This is why I'm a huge fan of betas. Now, like I said earlier, there is a big difference between a beta and a demo. A beta is typically the multiplayer aspect of a game. Sometimes it can be privatized where it requires you to make some type of purchase or pre-order to experience it. Even though it's basically a demo, the developers do have free range over the beta, and it acts more like a test for the developers. More times than usual, you'll find that a beta is completely different from the final game. Call of Duty Cold War should come to mind. The beta was more chaotic than the final game. Snipers were insanely overpowered, certain guns had different recoil patterns, and the score streaks function differently. Now imagine instead of a multiplayer beta, Call of Duty released a campaign demo. I think fans would react differently because it's hard to assess a single player game with only a couple hours of gameplay. And this is where certain demos may have their flaws. Now I appreciate demos, but I can acknowledge that sometimes the given amount of time we're giving isn't really enough to fully assess whether or not we want to buy the game. Honestly, the demos only really benefit single player games, and developers have to really be selective about what part they put in their demo. I remember back during the PlayStation 2 era, I got my hands on a Kingdom Hearts 2 demo, and for some odd reason, Square Enix decided to put players through the tutorial section of the game, and if you played the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Literally because of how rough this section of the game was, I almost never picked up Kingdom Hearts, but luckily enough, one of my friends let me borrow the full game and I never looked back. But it just goes to show how crucial demos can make or break your game, and I think many developers know this. Why risk your entire project that you've been working on for years just because a small section of your game won't be liked by the player base? Now, like I said, the concept of video game demos still exists. You can definitely play demos through Steam or other PC stores, but however, you don't typically see AAA games on those lists. It's typically just small indie developers, and I think this is where demos are actually beneficial. I think when it comes to new gaming IPs, or specifically indie developers, they should push to release video game demos to the public to gain everybody's trust and gain some notoriety. Because I feel like as a new developer, you want to get as many eyes on your project as possible in order to build some type of crowd. Now, when it comes to long-writing titles or even well-known developers, I don't think demos are necessary or even worth it. This is because everybody already knows what they're getting into once the game is announced. Like, ask yourself, if they announced a new GTA right now, do you honestly think you would have to play a demo before you would get it? Most people will say no because it'll be the 6th game in the franchise, so by now you should know what the game is all about. But then if companies are straying further away from game demos, then what are they doing to get their games out there aside from trailers? So I think most of you guys are familiar with media days, where a game is about to be released and the company invites different media firms, news article guys to come to the studio and try out the game. Now I think there's a sudden shift in the culture. We're seeing more and more content creators being put in this group. And honestly, I think this is a good thing because I think the public is slowly starting to see that these big gaming news articles such as IGN have really strange opinions on games they review. We're not gonna forget about the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire review.
And small updates and tweaks help make the journey smoother, even if annoying problems
still exist, like the overabundance of water.
I'll put it like this. If there's a new Battle Royale first-person shooter, I'd rather seek out the opinion of a content creator like Shroud or Ninja than go read an IGN article. Back to the topic in hand, I prefer this way of making my buying decisions. If I could constantly see gameplay and get a good insight from trusted individuals, that's almost as good as actually playing the demo. Now this isn't really the most ideal way of doing this, like just take a look at Cyberpunk and see how that went. But lately, I personally have been doing this with games I've been buying recently. Of course, I can acknowledge that nothing can compare to actually playing the game firsthand, but I've realized that having the game constantly in your face and having people talk about the mechanics and the features of the game does have an effect. And we're also seeing more and more gaming companies take this route, and I think pretty soon, we won't be seeing traditional demos anymore. Now I want to end by saying this, I don't necessarily hate video game demos or believe they do us a disservice, but I can say the lack of traditional demos doesn't necessarily surprise me. I grew up playing video game demos because they were the only games I could play since my parents didn't want to buy me any. So I never understood the value of a demo, but now that I'm older and technology has advanced, I'm more cautious about what games I buy since I don't have an infinite amount of money. Yes, a demo would be nice so that I can make the right choice, but with the amount of trailers, gameplay, and live streams and articles, this is more than enough to influence my decision. So yes, traditional video game demos are dead, but it isn't really a bad thing. We have many other options besides a demo to tell whether or not a game is going to be good. Yes, hype can cause games to underperform when they release. Let's not forget about No Man's Sky or even the recent Cyberpunk 2077, but with how vocal communities are becoming and how willing developers are to working with their fan base, gaming can still strive without a demo. Well, that's going to do it for the video, guys. Let me know what you guys think about the concept of video game demos. Do you think it's dead? Do you think that we still need video game demos? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're kind of close to hitting 100 subscribers, so it'll be awesome if we can hit it this year. Anyways, my name is Quasi, and this was just a game.